Smaller businesses should make non-scalable models. The challenge is when we are small, because we want to raise lots of money, we tend to create scalable models. Conventional wisdom also says that 95% startups fail.
Yes.
So that means there is something wrong somewhere. If we already designed a system where 95% of companies are destined to fail, then the system itself is flawed, because most of the people who are overworking are predominantly overworking because they don't have any other exciting thing going on. In no other stock market in the world, this is true.
Hello and welcome to Pathfinders, our podcast series from Success Alchemists, in which we bring to you success stories of entrepreneurs and founders from different areas of business. There are so many of them who have navigated through challenges and overcome those challenges successfully to build businesses and grow businesses. And each step of their success has resulted in many interesting stories. With one such interesting story, today at our studios, we have Vikas Kumar. Is the co-founder at LoanTap, but he has been a serial entrepreneur who has built many businesses in the last almost 25 years. Thank you very much, Vikas, for sparing time.
Pleasure's mine.
So, Vikas, how about we start with where did this idea of being a serial entrepreneur come to you from?
If you remember the 1999, 2000, there was this whole tech wave. There was a lot of interest in forming tech companies and various startups, just initial stages. In fact, I don't even remember whether the word startup was coined then or not, right? So I got together with 3 friends and they were also interested in, forming a startup, and then we just took the plunge.
Do you think that a lot of people even today are wanting to take that plunge, but the challenges are much more and varied now?
Yes, I think a couple of things have changed, some on positive, some on negative. One of the biggest positive is in 2000 when I started, it was difficult to convince your family and friends and all that you should leave a job like Infosys and, start your own startup. Today, startup is not a bad word. So it's quite, in fact, glamorized. So if you go and say you're a startup founder, you're looked at with respect. So that's a huge positive. On the negative side, there is just too much competition. So if you look at any area, you will see hundreds of startups being formed in one area. So it just doesn't give you enough scope, and all are funded. So it just doesn't give you enough scope to be able to actually dominate the market. It's difficult to survive with so much competition. In 2000, when I was doing my first startup, and that time it was like there were so few startups that you had a clear window. If you had enough money and enough guts to go ahead, you could progress really fast and go very far. Now, because of the sheer competition, it's very difficult.
So, Vikas, it is said that there is a product for every customer and there's a customer for every product. But given that, like you said, there are hundreds of startups in almost every area of customer need, do you really think it is sustainable? Will they all survive, flourish?
No, the mortality rate will be very high. Like take AI, for example. Suddenly you see hundreds of AIs. But AI is basically a winner takes it all model. So within the AI war, only few will survive, and the ones with really funded. So a lot of the smaller AI startups will either get acquired quickly or will eventually die.
So are we headed for a consolidation in next few years where only the large players will continue to exist?
Yes, it will happen. If
or boutique offerings?
Yeah, even if you've seen FinTech, already consolidation have started. Some banks have started acquiring, some companies are merging, right? In the D2C brands, you saw acquisitions by Tata's acquired a couple of companies, Reliance has acquired.
Yes.
So you're seeing consolidation there. And if you notice, you're seeing all the smaller companies are really struggling, right, to grow their revenue. Because at the end, they're just spoiled for choices. So even if you have the best product, how do you prove it to the market that it is the best product?
What should a budding businessman in this area do when he knows that there are 100 others who are already competing? Creating a differentiator is really difficult, and to make things even more difficult, the technological advancement is happening at such a rapid pace that things become outdated even before they are able to occupy a certain space. How should people negotiate through all this?
So the founder of Y Combinator, Paul Graham, he said one very interesting thing, right, which people have sort of not noticed at all. Smaller businesses should make non-scalable models. The challenge is when we are small, because we want to raise lots of money, we tend to create scalable models, which then become very difficult. Again, take AI as an example. If you have a scalable model, the bigger guy is going to kill you.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So the key in a small model, and that's why you see today a kirana dukan is still surviving. Boutique companies are still surviving because their models are non-scalable. So if you're today starting a startup and you don't have like a $10 million check, then most probably it's a good idea to do a non-scalable model so that other people are not so interested in that space, right? Because it doesn't look very scalable. And then over time, once you reach a certain level, then you pivot to a more scalable model.
This is becoming interesting because conventional wisdom says that if it is technology, it has to be scalable. That's the beauty, that's the DNA of technology.
Yes, conventional wisdom also says that 95% startups fail.
Yes.
So that means there is something wrong somewhere. If we already designed a system where 95% of companies are destined to fail, then the system itself is flawed, because we should be creating systems where the success ratio is higher.
Right.
So that means whatever we have learned is most probably wrong, because it encourages 95% startups to fail.
So tell me what kind of challenges that you and your co-founders faced, and how did you overcome them to make sure that you are part of the 5% and not the 95%? And that too, year on year, every single year, in every single business for almost 25 years now.
See, I have obviously a bit of advantage because I have been a serial entrepreneur. So I don't get too flustered in seeing companies going up and down, and it's part of the flow. New entrepreneur gets very worried and frightened the moment something there's a downside.
Yeah.
So see, when you run a startup, the challenge is India's ecosystem is very tough to run with.
Right.
Right, there's so much regulation, so much policies. So it is a difficult environment to succeed in. Right. One of the key things which I realized is that you have to survive. Right. So
Yeah, so you mentioned about being lucky. Another element from conventional wisdom says that the harder you work, the luckier you get. How true has it been in your case?
yeah, see, it's about survive. The same thing which I'm saying. If you survive, if you're long enough in the game,
Yeah.
at some point you'll win.
Right.
Right. You have to be in the game long enough. So at some point we have also been lucky. I'm lucky. There was this COVID phase. A lot of
Yes.
startups died. We reduced our costs. Got in a shell of sort of a thing. Right. For months we did not have any business. Very little business. We found alternatives. So we at that time we were only doing predominantly personal loans. We started exploring supply chain financing, because personal loan was almost negligible.
Yes.
Negligible at that point.
Almost.
So is that cockroach thing? You have to keep surviving, right? Keep finding, keep pivoting, keep going, and at some point luck will be on your side. You have to stay till then in the game.
Continue to survive one way or the other. Has the set of challenges that entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs like you used to face, say about 15, 20 years ago compared to now, have they really undergone a very big change, or are the basics still the same?
So funding has become way easier, right? So funding in the 2000s was way more difficult. The other very interesting thing that has happened is the amount of equity you have to shell out is dramatically different. So in the 2000s, the VCs used to take significantly higher, to the tune of 5 times to 10 times the amount of equity they take today. So in 2000s, if you formed a company, you would be left with very little equity, which is now not true. So even in the seed round and all, the amount of dilution is way, way lesser. Right.
Which gives the original co-founders much more freedom
And motivation
and
to continue.
to continue.
So if you're surviving for a long time and every round you dilute and you're left with only 1%, 2%, 3%, you have no more motivation left.
And you are under the risk of being taken over at any point in time.
And so you eventually sell out.
Yeah.
Right. So that has dramatically changed. The equity, you don't have money. The other which is amazingly come out is the IPO model.
Yes.
So earlier, nobody ever discussed an IPO, that you could possibly do an IPO.
Yes.
But now startups are doing IPOs. It is real. I know startups who are planning to do an IPO. We ourselves want to do an IPO. So this IPO avenue has opened up in the last 2-3 years big time. And that will completely change the game of startup, because it now allows you to build a small company to the tune of 500,000 crores also and go for an IPO. Earlier, so the whole concept of unicorn evolved from the fact that it was not possible to make money till you became that big. But with the IPO option, now it is possible to make a nice boutique firm. And again, I told about non-scalable. So one of the most brilliant things you can do today is create a non-scalable model, get it to 400, 500 crores, and then do an IPO. And if you notice very interestingly, a lot of the SMEs, which you never imagined, are now doing IPOs. Small companies, a garage, small company, they're doing small, 200, 300 crores. So the SME is also now behaving like a startup.
Yes.
Right.
Which is a massive change in the landscape.
It's a massive change. So now a startup earlier never competed with SME. Now he's competing with SME also. Because the SME now, because he's now focusing to IPO, is behaving like a startup.
What is it that we should expect in another 10 years? How will the landscape change further?
After this AI coming in, it is so difficult now to
predict
what will happen after 10 years or even 5 years. But what I see is that the tech and this roots has allowed smaller companies to survive and thrive like never before. So if you look at the the stock market.
Yes.
On one side, we have seen the stock markets have tripled or so in the last 4-5 years.
Yes.
But look at the data of the financials of the companies.
Yeah.
All the small companies, you see the SMEs, which are, let's say currently the market cap is 5,000 crores.
Okay.
And they started in 2000.
Okay.
Right, let's say.
That's about 20 years ago.
25 years ago. Till 2015 or 20, their market cap is 1,000 crores.
Yeah.
And now suddenly they have increased 5 times.
Fivefold.
But their revenue is also increased by 3-4 4-fold.
Yes.
So suddenly the SMEs and all have started growing like crazy. So and they are now able to compete with the biggies, because they are now focusing on specific niches which the biggies can't capture. So what will change, I believe, over the next 5-10 years, the biggest change I see is that a lot of people will just run companies with 10, 15, 20 people. With AI, with tech, it will be possible to create a 500 crore company with only 10, 20, 30, 40 people. With low cost, high profit margins, these models will work. The same model.
People getting so overwhelmed with work that not finding adequate time for doing their own personal things or pursuing passion. In between all of this, in last 25 years, you have continued to maintain a regime of following your own fitness regime. How do you do that?
So I don't think a work or LoanTap defines me. Right. What defines me is my passion, what I do. I love running marathons. I do triathlons. Those are the things which honestly define me. Startup is something which I do, right? I want to build startup, but that's not what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered that, for my passions, I used to, whatever, for my family. Those are the things which are most probably more important in life.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. So at the end, you have to prioritize.
Correct.
And then it works out fine. Most of the people who are overworking are predominantly overworking because they don't have any other exciting thing going on.
Yeah.
Beyond work, and we make work only our passion.
Yeah.
So I feel that that's not the way I was. I mean, you should not really make work too much, not become too passionate about work per se. Work is important, but you should have other passions beyond work.
So that brings us to the end of this episode of our podcast series. There are 3 takeaways that I am going home with today. The first one, and I really liked it the way Vikas articulated it, that there is no need to get flustered with success or become extremely depressed with anything that has failed you, because in the long run it is like a marathon and things will keep changing from time to time. You have to continue to stay focused. The second one that I really liked is that there are survival skills which should be part of your DNA. So the times will change, the situation might change. One of the examples he shared was related to the regulatory framework becoming even more stringent. Those times will continue to be there. So while it is great to focus on flourishing, but the survival skills are extremely necessary. And the third one, which is really close to my heart, is to discover your passion and pursue it so that it defines you. And eventually, this is what becomes the reason for you to continue to keep staying excited for your work. Thank you so much, Vikas, for sparing time today.
Andy.
And
Wonderful
sharing your
talking to you.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Pathfinders, the podcast series from Success Alchemists. We meet again in our next episode, and until then, keep scaling up.